Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, nobody can tell you what kind of ice cream you like. Nobody can tell you what kind of music you like. But sometimes in life, as you meet people, you start to meet people and you realize your tastes in things are the same, or at least in some areas. And so what's happened to me is as I've just talked to other gamers, I found some things that we like the same. But as I'm expanding my RPG collection and figuring out like where am I going to branch out into, I found that Runeslinger has a lot of interests which I kind of gravitate towards. Not all of them, but there's been some games and some systems and whatnot that I'm like, yeah, that's really really cool. So I made the mistake of watching his Shelves of Hope video, and one of the games just really kind of just for whatever reason kind of stood out to me. I'm like, that I'd heard of it, but I had no clue what it was. And so I kind of read this review on RPGNet, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble. So I get this PDF and I get the hard copy, and it's really cool. And as I'm reading through it, I notice all of a sudden that it has something that I've read before. And he mentioned to me, oh, it's by the same company, Graymilkin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Graymilkin Designs. There you go. And they wrote Desolation, which I've talked about before. And Broken Rooms is not powered by Ubiquity. Desolation is, and I'll get back to that in a second about one part of this. But they use something here when you're fleshing out your character. It's called MPH, Motivation, Personality, and History. And actually Broken Rooms adds a fourth category called Appearance, where you describe like a detailed appearance of your character, not just, the usual tall, whatever, fat, brown eyes. They say, well, not just what would be found in their driver's license. Like, how about some more interesting detail? What do other people see them like as far as their appearance? And of course, we're all going to make them cool looking, right? We're all going to have badass characters, But the questions, this is something that I think we all kind of ask ourselves. Maybe we don't write that checklist. And I'm really talking about this is kind of a useful checklist to have when you're creating a character. Now, of course, I'm used to playing a lot of games. Your characters are really squishy. They're probably not going to live. I've got plenty of videos about the idea that I don't like to flesh a character out too much until they've actually made it for a while. But even so, maybe I'm not going to ask the same kind of detailed questions I'm going to ask in some of these games, like Broken Rooms and Desolation, where the character probably might live a little longer, maybe. But I'll still, the idea of having some little checklist, like what's their primary motivating force? What really, drives them? That's not, generally have some kind of idea when you make a character. And so even in Ubiquity games, which, Desolation is one of them, that's part of the deal is you write a 1 or 2 word motivation for the character. Like what's their, driving force? Is it fame? Is it redemption? Is it revenge? You figure that out. Greed, whatever it is, rise to power, all this good junk. What motivates them? And this, these games actually ask you a lot more questions. Both Desolation is definitely post-apocalyptic. Broken Rooms it's kind of post-apocalyptic. It's a weird apocalypse, but it is. So they tend to ask a lot of questions about what was your motivations before this horrible event, and what are your motivations now? What's kind of transferred over? What's changed? What drives your character? And then next one would be personality. And it's not just personality quirks. And generally, when I'm making like a squishy character for an old school game, usually I have something there. Are they impulsive? Are they, cautious? Are they, easily angered? A lot of times, sometimes what we do, at least what I do, is you flippantly come up with these things that are kind of like negative, but you flesh it out. And this game actually asks some interesting questions. Both the Graymilkin Design games. Asking about like what was their outlook on life, how did their race, religion, country of origin, all that kind of stuff. How did that affect their outlook on life? If they had some kind of traumatic event in their life, well, how did that really affect their personality? What about their personality? What in their personality gives them hope? Which is an interesting question. But once again, these games are post-apocalyptic. What do they miss the most about their past life? You can flesh little things like that in there. But, as long as you have, to me, at least a little inkling of what your character's personality is. Like I said, this is kind of a neat checklist. I like this little Mr. Potato Head, MPH, kind of reminder. And then history. And, of course, we've all played these games where there's, somebody at least, either the game tells you to or you play with one player that has this, 5-page backstory. And you don't necessarily need that all the time. But, it's good to have some kind of idea of where your character came from, even if they might just die. So-and-so's from the farm, they want to get off the farm. I've had many a old school character like that that just wanted a better life. Maybe, but maybe want to ask why. But and of course, their parents always die horribly. Something, the cliche that we all bring to our characters, full of angst. But a little history, like where are they from, how do they make their living beforehand, before the apocalypse or just before, in period. Who are their friends, who are their family, anything traumatic happened to them before, if they've come through some hard thing, how do they survive, how do they meet the other characters in the party, good stuff like that. And do they have any kind of scarring events, not just physically but maybe mentally scarring. And then of course the whole appearance thing where you can get into is just as how cool or how mundane or whatever they look. So that's kind of a cool little checklist, and I really appreciated how these games by this company kind of detail that. And also, just as an aside, which has nothing to do with this topic really, these games really by this company do a really good job of giving you like examples of play, examples of what the characters are like. They kind of put little stories in there. They present the systems and the concepts of their games really, really well. So top-notch company. I've enjoyed their products so far. I mean, all two of them that I've looked at. But, they seem to really put a lot of care into getting you into the feel of the game and figuring out who your character is. So whether you're playing a game like that or whether you're playing even an old-school game, just, darn well if you watch my videos, I'm not one for like this big giant story when I'm making a Lamentations of the Flame Princess character. But at least kind of going through a checklist and what are they all about? Yeah, sure, they may die an hour into the session, but little idea. So that you're not just playing an avatar of yourself or just a little pawn on the board. You could if you want to, but I think it's a lot more fun to make them real. Fictional real, but real.